So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If we can all be seated, we can start the session of this morning. I hope you have been enjoying Munich so far and the meeting, the presentations, and all the discussions. I hope everything has been fruitful for you all. This morning, as always, we are going to have a panel discussion with the committees, the chairman of the IREPAS committees. You know them, but let me just introduce. Once again, representing Raw Material Suppliers Committee, Mr. Jens Björkman, representing the Traders Committee, Mr. Doğan Baysal, and representing the Producers Committee and the chairman of IREPAS, Mr. Murat Cebecioğlu. Are with me here this morning. They will share the findings of their respective committee, and then I will be directing the questions we have collected for them. Obviously, you are more than welcome to stop me at any time if you have any questions, or at the end of the session, we will have a short Q&A session as well. So, shall we start with the Raw Material Suppliers Committee, Jens?
Right. Good morning. The IREPAS in Munich was well attended by raw materials suppliers, and we saw the beautiful backdrop of the Oktoberfest, which was fantastic. The raw material suppliers met yesterday afternoon in Oktoberfest style. We saw a great attendance at that event, which was fantastic to see. And the talking points were focused much on the current situation with trade, where we've seen Europe decline in industrial activity, which has put pressure on ferrous scrap generation, and the ability to consume has been slower than previously, and which has meant also that more material has been exported. The problems for the last period has been a lot on freight, so we had multiple topics on the current freight situation, which has been absolutely devastating for business. The trade barriers and uncertainty has continued in the global arena, not least for ferrous scrap, which has normally not been tariffed, but currently is towards the United States, for example, which means material finds other ways and puts pressure on other destinations, such as Turkey, which has also seen some slowdowns in consumption, especially for the electric arc furnace route, which has been less competitive when blast furnaces have been producing at a greater extent. Investments in the green transition we talked about yesterday as well. The transition is more and more being questioned, and investment activity has also been cancelled, and some projects have been delayed. So the expected transition, which was supposed to happen now, is being delayed a few years. The European demand for the electric arc furnace route has postponed by at least 3 or 4 years. And if the carbon emission trading in Europe if the pricing for carbon emissions actually do come into play, it of course means that the electric arc furnace needs to be installed to a greater extent, but perhaps not with hydrogen-derived DRI. Instead of hydrogen, we can expect natural gas, for example. So, and Turkey was a focal point, of course. Maintained ferrous scrap price levels fairly stable this year, despite all the uncertainty. The recent pickup in freight costs is a current burden on suppliers, but it has also meant that pricing in Turkey has had to come up slightly. And how long that lasts is difficult to say, but the current freight market is, of course, very difficult to navigate. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's continue with the traders. Mr. Baysal.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On our traders committee, the main subject was again China. And naturally, China is the largest producer of steel in the world. On China, we discussed production and exports of China from 2023 until now. We concluded that both production and exports have increased, but exports have increased in much higher percentage than the production, especially on long products like billets. We noticed that there are no expectation for production cuts. With that, local stock levels in China are normal level. There were questions on how China was reacting to the trade barriers. We were told that China started investing in production in certain destination countries. Of course, due to trade barriers, China will go to the least protective countries like in Africa and South America. We had discussions on Turkey, especially on current cost structure of Turkish mills and how they cope with the high cost of energy and raw materials. We were told that to save energy and comply with the CBAM regulation, they have started to invest in solar and renewable energy sources, which will bring the production costs down and rely less on the local grid, sometimes unreliable one too. For the export markets and destinations, Turks still depend on Europe, especially Eastern Europe, benefiting from the proximity in shipping. That was their advantage. They also continue to sell in North and Central Africa and Central America as alternate sources. We touched base on raw materials. We discussed the current situation on iron ore and concluded that iron ore prices just firmed in the last quarter of 2025 and is about $100 level. And of course, iron ore prices go up and down depending on the supply and demand in China, which is the largest users of it. And now India is becoming the second biggest user of iron ore. We discussed the current spread between the rebar and the scrap and concluded that the spread is around $200, maybe a bit less than that today. For that reason, we thought that there will be scrap prices will be under pressure. As usual, we discussed the advantage of blast furnace versus electric arc furnace, and still notice that the blast furnace has about $25 advantage over the electric arc furnace mills. Of course, that changes with the countries, especially where the electricity prices are low, just like in the United States. We had discussions on freight, especially in the Far East rates. Far East container rates have come down from their high 4,000 after COVID to about $1,200 level, and we don't expect that prices to go down any further. Actually, we don't expect the price to go up either. Bulk rates are steady and about $30 to $40 for the 50,000 ton vessels. And tanker rates are steady and high due to the oil transportation and in between the continents. We expect both bulk and tanker rates to be steady. Generally what we have discussed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And next is Producers Committee. Mr.
Thank you. Good morning once again to all. Again, like the previous meetings, we had a good attendance in overall on the 93rd IREPAS meeting, and also yesterday's producers meeting. We had 49 producers from 23 countries represented by 123 representatives. Well, as always, in our producers committee, we have discussed about the basic economic indicators of the represented countries, new projects, what's happening in the country or in the region, expectations, and so on. I'll go through the countries. I will try to go through the countries one by one, as much as I took notes. Vietnam, they were there the first time represented in the meeting. GDP is good. They've been expected over 6% increase. There were some infrastructure projects and housing, both have room to grow. Of course, they were exporting quite a good amount to US, but after the anti-dumping case against them, all that volume is trying to find a home at the moment. Mexico exports are under pressure due to tariffs, of course. Mexico is also putting some sort of measures against Asia. There are imports from China. In general, the growth is small, but gives hope for the future. Canada is doing well in terms of production. Infrastructure work keeps me busy. Imports coming from Asia to the west coast. Saudi Arabia demand is very, very good, as said yesterday. Scrap and billets imports, profit margin is low due to the scrap high prices, putting, of course, low prices, putting pressure on the prices. Scrap high prices putting pressure on the scrap prices. Big projects are there, like NEOM, but there's a slowdown in some projects due to the World Cup and some other big projects. They have the priority, as far as I understood. There are some exports to Syria. United Arab Emirates doing very, very well. GDP is plus 4% increase expected. Demand is very, very strong. 500,000 monthly rebar consumption is there. Infrastructure and residential projects are there. Dubai Metro Pipeline Airport. They'll probably do the biggest airport in the world at the moment. They will start. $30-some billion. Population increasing, that means brings more job and together with it, the demand will increase. Many sectors, of course, will benefit from them. China is offering very, very low prices as they do to other geographical places. Egypt, GDP is good, growing 4%. Inflation is coming down. Protective measures for imports needed. Scrap demand is high. When you look at Europe, like Greece, Italy, it's improving slowly and steadily. Exports are limited. Small increase is expected in EU in general. They haven't reached the levels before they had. There's a long way to go, but it's getting there slowly. Spain is better than before, and there are some projects in the pipeline, expectations for the future. Months are okay. But just to summarize, it is what it is. It's the elephant in the room, as we've been talking about it. China is the main driver at the moment in our sector. Demand is, in general, limited. China and other countries in the region exporting heavily with very low prices, of course, putting pressure on prices everywhere else and hurting the markets in general. Many countries are also going for some sort of protected measures against China, if they haven't done it yet, not only to China and some Asian countries as well. Tariffs by the US is also hurting the trade in general. Who will finally benefit all this mess, yet to be seen. Although there are some improvements in economies, it will take some time to get back to the normal levels. This is what actually we have discussed.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Obviously, we are all looking at some better news from China. Hopefully, if their domestic demand increases, there will hopefully be some relief for everybody in the market. Thank you very much once again for sharing the findings of your respective committees. Ladies and gentlemen, I will start with the questions we have collected. I will be directing those questions to the panel. And as I mentioned earlier, whenever you want to have a question, please stop me and let me have your question. Let's start with the protectionism, and this is for the panel. This question is for the panel. How far along the protectionist road have we advanced? So many tariffs and safeguard measures have been put in place so far. Will this trend continue for the foreseeable future? Can we expect trade barriers to be erected against the huge inflows of cheaper steel from Asia, and in particular from China? Would that be a good or a bad thing for yourselves?
Well, I guess
comment first.
Yeah, I guess you can say that it will definitely continue for the foreseeable future. You don't have to expect more trade barriers because there's already enough of them, you know. As far as the inflow of cheaper steel from Asia, there will be more coming up, and more countries will be doing the same thing. As an advocate of really free trade, I definitely think this is a bad idea. Besides, trying to create an artificial barriers is not economically best option for any country. You should buy products from countries that produce more and equip better and supply. So this free trade is the best deal, but unfortunately, this is not the trend going today.
Thank you.
I might add a few things to this. I mostly agree with Doğan, but I will also have to add something. Demand is so limited. Everybody is trying to protect what is theirs. You know, there is no markets today to export because of these duties. Some sort of protectionist measures all over the world, like against Turkey. I'll talk about Turkey. US has, you know, Section 232. Actually, they have it everywhere, 50% plus anti-dumping and CVD cases to most of the mills. Fortunately, we've gone down to zero as İştaş, but still we have 50%, still not quite easy to sell. And also, when you sell to US, you have to take the risk of being importer of record, which is for the future quite dangerous. You might get tax later on, duty, when you are reviewed. After that, Canada, you cannot sell. Europe, okay, you can sell only every other 3 months because of the quota, and the quota is very limited. It's like below 100,000 for 3 months for the whole Turkey. So it's filled as soon as the quota is open, the first of every quarter. You know, because of China, you cannot sell the other places. Again, you know, these protectionist measures are really hurting everyone. And there are, as far as I know, I think it's been talked yesterday, there are about 400 cases all around the world for these, some sort of measures. As long as the demand is very low, I think these measures will continue, unfortunately, just to protect everybody, you know, to their countries, or the mills in the countries.
You know, I thought that to have an anti-dumping and countervailing duties are fair, as long as it's applied fairly, is enough. For them to continue to go a blanket 50% does not really make sense, because you have to really differentiate from countries that are really dumping versus the countries that have not even tried to dump and been modestly offering you their products. So there should be a distinction between both, but unfortunately, our administration doesn't think so.
Yeah.
Jens?
No, I agree. The problem with protectionism is, of course, that we could continue to build up or continue to build an already over-established production in many geographies. So now there are rumors that Europe will impose some duties further for Asian material, I guess, and it will absolutely continue.
Thank you. I'm curious. I just would like to ask a question. So you live in the States. Apart from professionals, apart from your professional opinion, as a person living in the States, as an American citizen, how do you see the impact of this 50% blanket tariff in daily life of the Americans? How do people react?
As a matter of fact, sadly, people don't know. The only thing that they hear now is the reciprocal duty, because now their wine will come a little bit more expensive. How steel comes with 50%, they don't even know. I mean, I can tell you, except for the people that I know in my industry, nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. It's
And
sad.
I also think most of the people in the States think that exporters are paying the duty.
That's what the president says. That's what the president says. I mean, I don't think that they're naive. Well,
Yeah,
maybe
I
they
don't
are. But overall, what this does is it creates an artificial environment for mills to build up, which they did in States as well. But eventually, when these barriers come down, those mills will be, inefficient and not economically viable to stand. So this will create eventual problems for most of the mills that are built or increase capacities that was really unnecessary, where they could get, like from Canada. I mean, now we have a barrier against Canada, and we're building mills here. But tomorrow, when Canada becomes 51st state, then we won't need it anymore.
No, I mean, it's definitely, when these barriers come down, it's definitely not good for Nucor. As far as, if I'm not mistaken, during the last 7-8 years, they have recorded an EBITDA, total EBITDA of over $10 billion US.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
They are the ones who are benefiting.
Yeah,
Somebody has to benefit out.
Okay, thank you very much. So next question is for traders. What have been the main impacts so far on long steel trade flows due to the Trump administration's tariffs? Where are the volumes that have been deflected from the US being redirected? How has the market adapted to the unpredictability caused by Trump and also the additional uncertainty caused by the appeals made in the US against the legality of Trump's tariffs?
Well, the impact on the imports is basically imports slowed down, really to almost extinction. It's very, very hard to import steel in the United States with 50% plus anti-dumping, plus countervailing duties. So sometimes they go as high as 75%, even 100%. So it became almost impossible. Also, don't even look at only North America. I mean, for United States, Canada immediately imposed another 50%, duty on all imports, created a very small percentage for the what they call friendly countries or the free trade countries that they had with, but those quotas are very small as well. So Canada is also protective. So Mexico is, as an exporter, a huge exporting country anyway. So really, it's all over the North America. We have the barriers. Now, what happened in the industry is most stockists believe or want to believe that this is not a long-term process. So what they're doing now is they're waiting to see when the rates will come down, they have hold on to their stocks and try to use that and not order new ones, because they also felt like Mr. Trump can change his mind overnight for any good or bad reason. So I believe from the first quarter, if this situation continues, which I think it will, the prices will firm up, and maybe with even 50%, there may be some opportunities for certain types of steel to come to the US.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. How about the legality of this? I mean, there are some discussions going on.
Yeah. Well, the legality discussion is on reciprocal duty. This is something that everybody is confusing in the United States. The steel duty is Section 232, which is national security. It's basically protect United States from overseas invasion. So we have that 50% on steel is for that, and that nobody can touch. In fact, when it went from 25 to 50, we also took it to courts and all the way to Supreme Court. It was rejected because it's national security. Now, reciprocal duty is a separate thing, which is what they have, let's say, for 10, 15%, in various countries. That is really not legal, because it should come from the Congress rather than the president himself. So president went overboard and put those reciprocal duties, which unfortunately I think will still hold, because when it comes down to it, probably the Republicans already start screaming that this will cost $50–60 billion for the United States. We're going to lose so much money. Please don't reverse it. And on one point, they may have a point, because with using that threat, they made some agreements with certain countries. And they used the 50–60 rates and negotiated to lower rates like they did with EU to 25 or 15% in that case. So because some countries already accepted and negotiated, so that may stand.
Thank you very much, even though those are not good news. Okay, next question is for the producers. What's the latest situation regarding Turkish steel producers' capacity utilization rates? Considering imports, especially from China, coupled with global protectionism, how do you see the future prospects for Turkish steel mills in terms of competitiveness and profitability, both domestically and globally?
Under these circumstances, not good. Well, protectionist measures we've been talking about, and we also talked about it in previous panel question. It's still going on, and because of those measures, Turkey has a limited place to export. You cannot export to the US, and you cannot do that to Canada, here and there. So we only have left in few countries where we can expect, which puts also the competition is so tough. The countries we used to export, now they became exporters to what is left. The cake is getting smaller and smaller. So, of course, this affects the production. And what we are doing today, Turkey has a capacity of around 60 million tons, but producing around 38 million tons, a little close to 40 million tons, which is like 60–65%. So yes, everybody is cutting the capacities. We are not utilizing all what we have. These measures are bad, and China is also exporting heavily to all around the world. That's also putting pressure. You have to compete with them accordingly, and it's quite difficult to catch those prices, to give those prices. Then, of course, at the end, you have to cut production because you cannot compete.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next question is for the Raw Material Suppliers Committee, Mr. Björkman. Do the changes in Turkey's inward processing regime give scrap suppliers an advantage over Turkish mills who are already struggling under very high costs?
Well, we could expect demand for scrap to increase slightly from the Turkish regiment, but perhaps that also means that the buyers of the billets that perhaps was imported before might mean that they also become less competitive. So it might also mean that they reduce production. So in the short term, yes, it's probably positive for scrap, but it could also mean it could be devastating for the for the buyer. But probably yes, in the short run.
Okay. Just for the sake of explanation, now Turkish producers or Turkish exporters, let's say, will have to use at least 20% of domestic billets in their mix of materials, input materials, after this change. So they will not be able to use 100% imported billets.
And slabs.
Sorry?
And slabs.
And slabs, of course. Since we are
25%.
talking about long products, I mentioned billets. And slabs, yes, semi-finished, let's say in general. Okay, next question is for the producers again. The Chinese steel market continues to struggle with oversupply and low finished steel prices. Steel production is declining, but mainly due to lower demand and less due to capacity cuts. The finished steel market will likely contract in 2025, just like in previous years. Is a soft landing expected for the Chinese steel market in 2026 thanks to the Steel Industry Growth Stabilization Work Plan for 2025-2026? How long can the transition from carbon-intensive steel production take, given the slow pace of decline in steel capacities? Too long a question.
Too long and kind of difficult to answer. Well, Chinese steel industry growth stabilizing work plan consists of many things, as far as I know. They are trying to steer the industry via many regulations, I think, environmental constraints and market feedback. 4% growth is expected, planning. That means they are going to take things slowly. That means maybe there will be quality over the volume. Technologically upgrading, okay, for green steel and low carbon methods, meaning maybe future competition will be depend on being cleaner. Shutting down inefficient mills is also a part of the plan. And exports may be regulated more tightly, quotas and exerting. Of course, they always keep coming up with some sort of plans, but at the end we don't see really what is happening. If they are able to apply all what is said in this plan, it might, of course, work at the end and give us a room to breathe a little bit. But it's yet to be seen how they will proceed on this road. I don't know what else to say. When it comes to China, it's quite difficult.
Yes, it's quite difficult. They are very much unpredictable.
Yeah,
maybe not.
But this is what I know about all this work plan.
Okay. Any other comments from the panel? No. Or from the floor? We still need to live and see what's going to happen. So next question is for traders. Mr. Baysal, once again on China. According to Chinese customs in the January-August period this year, China's exports of steel bars increased by 52.2% year-on-year, while its wire rod exports rose 12.1% year-on-year. In the same period, China's semi-finished steel exports amounted to 9.24 million tons, rising by a massive 292% year-on-year. Hopes of improvements in Chinese domestic demand, of decreases in Chinese steel production, and reduced Chinese exports have consistently been disappointed. On the contrary, Chinese exports have continued to increase and to undercut the prices of competitors. Do you foresee the possible emergence of any factors that might help change this situation in the coming period? Will the recent work plans announced in China for the steel and construction materials sectors make any difference?
Well, unfortunately, I don't consider the Chinese behavior as responsible and caring for the world steel industry. As a remedy, we have heard many times, especially also in IREPAS meetings, that they're going to decommission the old mills. They still have induction mills. They still have some mills that work with coal. They were going to decommission them and take them out of the production and reduce the capacity. What we see now is they did take some of the extremely inefficient mills out, but they have combined the other mills under few umbrellas of big giants, and they have added more electric arc furnace mills. So at the end, total production have not changed. Luckily, in the last 2 years, we have not seen growth in production much, but because the construction industry in the country have slowed down, then they turn into exports and more exports. So this additional capacity is basically put on to the rest of the world.
Thank you very much. So moving on to the next question. This one is for raw material suppliers. The long-term outlook is for China's domestic scrap supply to grow significantly due to its massive in-use steel stock. How much will EAF-based crude steel production in China increase in the coming years? This obviously refers to supply-demand balance in China.
Right. So, the signaling from China is that they will reduce production and exports. That's what they've said. Both 2025 and 2026 should see lower exports than the years before. But if that's going to happen, who knows? We'll see, I guess. But going forward, in the longer run, we should see a larger investment activity in the EAF route, especially when energy is available to a greater extent than it up until now has been. Of course, energy is necessary to use an electric arc furnace, electricity, and previously that has not been readily available everywhere. But China is a hugely well-invested country now with stable electricity production. So we can expect electric arc furnace routes to be an important part of the mix going forward, due to the fact that we will have a large pool of scrap generated within China, and that will need to come into use in the Chinese steel production.
We'll see what happens there. They had also announced that they were going to cut like 90 million tons of production, crude steel production, in 2025, and we still have 3 more months.
Yes.
And they are like at 1/3 of that undertaking.
Very tough.
Is China a net importer of scrap?
No.
It's not now.
Sufficient, huh?
Okay, next question is for the panel, and once again on China. According to the work plan for stabilizing growth in the steel industry released by the Chinese authorities, China will strengthen efforts to ensure supply and price stability for iron ore, coking coal, and other raw materials. How do you think these efforts will affect the market fundamentals in the long run?
If it happens, it will affect perfectly. But we heard that in the last maybe, well, I shouldn't say 10 years, but for sure the last 5 years we've been hearing the same story. So I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, that's what I said in the previous questions.
Exactly
The same thing. So if it happens, it's good, but you will never know.
This is rather a reliability issue.
Yeah, exactly. We just have to wait and see. You know, if it happens, yes, of course.
Yes.
But I don't know, maybe Jens can raw materials or whatever.
China is, you have to look at the central government, and also each state is different, and none of the regions want to give up their strength. So there is a struggle between the regions and the central government. So really, one thing that's dictated from the central government does not necessarily go down to each state.
Well, the provincial governments, they need the taxes from steel
Exactly.
so they don't let them cut production.
And the local guy goes and begs to the governor there, please don't shut me. Everybody says, don't shut me.
Yes. So it's an internal struggle, and we are all suffering because of that.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question here is for the producers. Do you think that Turkish or North African producers could gain an advantage in the export markets following the implementation of China's work plan for stabilizing growth in the steel industry?
Yeah, if it goes through, yes, again, the same thing. I mean, really, I hope it works. Of course, they said they will be exporting much less. I think in 2025, it's the record level for exports for them, around 125, 130 million tons or whatever. But if they cut down exports and bring some regulations, which it seems that they will do according to this plan, of course it helps. They leave us alone because there will not be so many Chinese or Asian material in the region with those very low prices, so that can give us a room to breathe and to sell. It really, again, it all depends, as Doğan says, what they are going to do. If everything works, it's okay. Yeah, why not?
Well, we always discuss that 50-60 million tons of exports from China would be
okay.
Still
yeah.
okay.
Still okay.
Still okay.
Up to 60-70 was okay, but now you go above that level, and they are always doing almost the double of what they were doing now. So it really hurts everyone.
At this pace,
and demand is low on the other side. Everything like a domino effect. It's bad.
Of course, to their defense, they say we're only exporting 1/10 of what we're producing.
That's enough. It's a billion ton of one.
Very small percentage.
Yes. Yeah. And they were comparing us with the Turkey. Oh, we export less than Turkey. Turkey puts 50-60% of what they're producing. We're only doing 10%.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, let's hope that we'll live and see the implementation of this plan.
What you could also see is, of course, that these Chinese steel producers are investing in other Asian countries.
Right.
And so what you might see is also that instead of the producers near Europe or Turkey or North Africa become more competitive, is that you will also see more competition from other Asian countries.
Yeah, particularly Southeast Asia.
Right.
I mean, we were importing from China a lot of pipe when we had the anti-dumping against China, and we had to stop, and then realize within 6 months we had calls from Taiwan, Thailand, and Vietnam. Especially Vietnam.
Yeah.
And we went and visited the mills. We saw the same manager that was managing the Chinese mill, and how fast they moved that mill. Exactly the same mill, because we have qualified. We know exactly the details of that mill, sitting in Vietnam, trying to offer us the same product. So, yeah, that's what they're doing now.
Mm.
Well, it's we have to give them credit. It's fantastic.
And they're fast.
They're fast. All right. So moving on to the next question. This is for the traders. What are the competitive advantages of North African countries in the steel trade?
Well, of course, the main advantage is the local production of oil and gas, especially countries like Libya and Algeria. They have abundance of gas and oil, which will help their energy cost, and that's why they give them a major advantage if they utilize it well. Of course, the second advantage is when we looked at the world market, a lot of markets are closed. The next big market for the world and the growing market is Africa. Here they are sitting in Africa, North Africa, so they're very close to that markets. So that helps them as well, you know, and especially for the North Africa, their proximity to Europe, you know, within Mediterranean, it's the cheapest way to ship to Europe. And frankly, from when you sit from the ports, they can come to America or South America, Central America as well. So location-wise, especially I'm talking about the North African countries have a huge advantage. Of course, there's really no production in Central Africa, and South Africa has diminished dramatically lately.
Thank you very much. Any comments on this question from our colleagues in Egypt, Morocco, or Algeria, Libya?
There's one gentleman.
No other comments. All right.
Rami wants to say something.
Rami? Oh, sorry. I didn't see your hand, sorry. Please.
I think, like Mr. Baisel was saying, but I just want to add with the CBAM and the green transition, also North Africa is having like a great potential because of on the iron making front, North Africa is making it typically from natural gas. So the DRI for sure is better than the blast furnace. I mean from the CBAM or from the decarbonization point of view, and most of the steel making technologies are electric arc furnace. So I think this could add also, and for sure apart from the protectionism, the current protectionism, there are also a lot of free trade agreements. With even not only with the European Union, where there is the Euro 1, but also there are some bilateral agreements like the one Egypt is having with Brazil, Mercosur agreement. So I think if we add all of those factors, that could make like a good potential for for North African countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rami. I appreciated your input. Sorry.
Good morning. I don't want to talk about North African, but I'm willing to tell something about what you discussed recently about China and the Chinese steel sector. I was in China like 2 months ago, and before that trip in China, I was also in China in 2018. And I've seen a very big difference in China. And the Chinese, I was there to make a speech in metallurgy conference in there. And I met with many Chinese producers, including Bao Steel, CEO, Shandong, Shagang, and all the big boys were there. At the end of the day, after having like a week in China, I have to tell you that these guys are working very, very hardly. And they are not only talking about to reduce the production, they are also working about to change the way of their production from, as we know, from zombie-style blast furnace factories to arc furnace factories. And it was 2018, they were planning to make like around 150 million ton from blast furnace to arc furnace. And when I was there 2 months ago, which they did it already, 150 average 3 million ton capacity, arc furnace production already there, and also in the pipeline. What I'm trying to say that these guys we just discussed, you just said that, these guys are also working in their technical side, how they reduce the carbon emission, because there were some presentations for technically. They are also working how to sell, how to organize their steel product to different destinations, not only their local market, but also in different destinations. And they are working, or I mean, they are not working in old-fashioned style. That's why, I mean, you just mentioned, I was willing to say that one. They're also making investment in different countries. And one, for example, Turkey is buying from Malaysia, for example, SteelOrbis. In fact, these are Chinese-controlled mills at the end of the day. And they are creating their own markets also with the help of Chinese government. This is what it was discussed there. And Chinese steel industry is such a big, such a huge industry, and we should not expect any miracle from their side that they reduce the production and they reduce their export something. We should not expect that kind of miracle. They are working on it. I mean, sincerely, I have to say that they are working on it. But how much they are able to manage, it's a question mark. It takes a long time. And what I say that Turkish mills, at the end of the day, also have to work on that style. What they are doing, they just open the shop, but they are not sitting in their shop. They are just going and visiting the customer side, and they are knocking the door and creating their own market. Watch what they do also in Africa. Many projects, I'm not talking about North Africa, I'm talking about the rest of Africa, even included Algeria. Many projects organized by Chinese government. I mean, Chinese government knocking the door, the government of African countries, and they are creating their project, and that project also organized or should be handled by the Chinese companies. I mean, at the end of the day, this is really, they are working very hard. This is why I have to say that.
Well, they're working hard for sure, but they're not really working hard to save the world. They're working hard to save their...
For themselves. For themselves. That's the reality. We have to accept that. And one case, just as a last point, I would like to say that as a Turkish man, Turkish steel industry is very important for us. Also, Egypt improved a lot. Recently, Morocco also became also important scrap import country. But Turkey is still #1 in the world. And the Turkish mills are still trying to wait scrap suppliers to come there and to sell them cargo with the cheap prices. But very openly, I have to criticize that matter. Turkish mills should do more, should make more cooperation with their scrap suppliers, especially since we are surrounded, as Turkish country, surrounded by the walls for the export. Similar situation for steel scrap. I mean, steel scrap export is going to be banned or going to be reduced. This is clear, maybe not today, but in the next 5 years. Therefore, Turkish mills also, to secure their scrap supply, they have to cooperate. It's a classic way, but they have to cooperate with the scrap suppliers. I mean, scrap suppliers are not their enemies. Their cooperation. They have to have a kind of cooperation with the scrap suppliers.
I would say, instead of cooperating, they should buy those companies and control the scrap people in Europe.
That issue is a big question mark.
In CIS. Why cooperate? Just buy them out.
No, I mean, cooperation is a part of that matters.
Okay, that's a good cooperation. I like that.
But at the end of the day, definitely, scrap suppliers have to work hard, but also need kind of at least more not a cooperation, but friendly discussion with their buyers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your contribution. All right, while we have started discussing scrap, let's move on to the next question. This is on scrap again, and for the Raw Material Suppliers Committee. For which scrap quality do you expect demand to increase in the GCC market? Is ferrous scrap or DRI HBI supply going to be more critical for steel production in the GCC over the next couple of years?
Well, we need to see more of DRI HBI in the market before DRI HBI is still a very limited product. We of course need to see more of DRI HBI in the European market, for example, after blast furnaces shift to electric arc furnaces for the flats production. For the flat production to be able to work with the coated products that they want to make in Europe, then they will need to have a lot of DRI or HBI in order to continue to be green, unless they use pig iron, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But
let me ask you this. Of course, it's a good thing to convert to DRI HBI instead of scrap. Don't you also have pollution when making the DRI and HBI?
Of course, but not as much pollution as you have when you use a blast furnace.
Okay.
So far less.
Percentage-wise, do you have any?
Oh, it's far less.
Far less, okay.
Far less. So I think we will see a mix. Scrap is being utilized already, also. So, okay, we will see logistical routes shift a little bit, like we are seeing when there's trade barriers. This happens also when you see demand shifts. So we will see a little bit of different logistical routes and newer customers, for example, but we will see a mix of the raw materials necessary.
Thank you very much. While we are on GCC, next question is for producers. The mega projects in the GCC are driving domestic demand. How sustainable is this demand? How do you evaluate the competitive strengths and weaknesses of GCC exporters in the global market?
Well, as previously also I said, there are big projects in GCC, especially in Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, really huge projects. The biggest airport in the world now they are trying to build in, I think in Dubai. There are some other projects like the NEOM projects in Saudi Arabia. The demand is quite good in the region, like 500,000 tons of rebar consumption every month in UAE. The demand is okay, and this will, I think, will still go on for at least for the next coming year or so. They're also exporting. They have exported even to Europe, to northern African countries also. Because they are very competitive against Turkish mills, and they still can do this much lower compared to us. Their cost in the absence of Turkish mills, they are able to sell to many countries. I think this will go on, and they have the upper hand on the prices, cost-wise, and there is demand in the region. As compared to Turkish mills, and the demand is where we are selling today is very low, and the competition is very tough.
Thank you. Any comments from the floor on this one? No. Moving on to the next question. This is for the traders. Mr. Baysal. European steel producers are reducing outputs in 2025 due to global oversupply, weak domestic demand, trade wars, political instability in the region, and tightening environmental policies. EU steelmakers are being forced to work at reduced capacity and to sell off subsidiaries, while the EU remains a high-margin market. Are there any plans in the EU for a large-scale stimulation of steel demand that could be implemented before 2030? Are EU governments willing to consider the easing of green transition requirements for steelmakers given the threat of capacity being relocated to other countries?
Well, I don't think there's direct discussions of easing the green transition, okay? But I think when I talk to the producers here, it seems like it's a possibility. I mean, a delay is a possibility. However, eventually they will enforce CBAM. And as I understand, I don't think it's clear that CBAM reference rate for each European mill is already been established, not to mention the same thing to be established for the overseas mills. So there's some really a lot of work to be done before you can just go back and put those limits, unless you put those limits artificially and then try to have each one come and back and fight for you and explain them that that's not fair for them, you know. I was talking to another trader here, and she was telling me, well, you know, you should also embrace the CBAM, because eventually the world should be paying attention to the, you know, carbon emissions. I understand, and they are saying that they're so happy that Europe is the leader in this one and is working on this one, and eventually the world will really accept and apply. But one thing is for sure, already with the threat coming, there is a movement from the blast furnace to electric arc furnace, which is a big difference. And most of the mills that I know are trying to do some investments in basically in solar or any renewable energy sources to equalize it, which personally I think good for them to do it, but I don't know why a steel mill has to do it, you know, just to show that they have one in production in one part of the country and they're polluting the other part of the country. It just doesn't make sense. But when you look at the overall, their idea is, you know, that will balance the pollution.
Thank you very much. By the way, I just received a note from my colleagues. China banned all iron ore cargoes from BHP because of a pricing dispute. So this is going to have an impact on the market as well, I guess. So they're really unpredictable. We never know what's going to hit us next. We have to think about this. All right, so thank you very much. Next question is for the Raw Material Suppliers Committee. Jens. Steel production in the EU steel producers in the EU believe recycled steel should remain within Europe. On the other hand, scrap traders and suppliers claim European demand is not sufficient and that limiting exports of the raw material would result in domestic oversupply with very serious consequences for the market. What is your position in this regard? How do you think a potential wave of protectionism in relation to scrap would impact the global market?
Well, we also listened yesterday to the economist who talked a little bit about this. The waste shipment regulation is one part of Europe's way to be able to handle, to make sure that waste is not exported. Of course, scrap as a waste class product is a raw material is handled as a waste in the legislation, which means that we will have more bureaucratic processes in Europe. We already have Europe is already quite a bureaucratic processed economy, but so we will see more of that, where non-OECD countries will need to make more formal requests towards EU to be able to continue to purchase the raw materials that they need from Europe. For OECD countries, it's not going to be affected. But then you have also of course, the steel lobby from Europe, which is of course trying to take some advantage of this situation, where they are intending to shift metallurgy from blast furnace towards electric arc, and need to know that there's raw materials for them. And there is currently an excess supply of ferrous scrap in the market, and with the metallurgy shift, that will lessen slightly. There will still be an excess raw material expected. So, but certain grades might be, there might be a very a large shortage of certain grades, like clean automotive grades, things like that. Whereas lower quality material will be ample supply. So I think it's due to the fact that some of these grades will be in shortages. That's the reasoning behind steel producers in Europe pushing this quite hard. But we don't expect the protectionistic measures to impact the global trade more than on the margin.
Thank you very much. Any comments from the producer side? No. We have to wait and see.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm going to start the last round of questions I have here, and this one is for the producers. Low profit margins, later payments, and an increase in insolvencies is leading to higher credit risks across Europe, but especially in Germany, Italy, and the UK. Basic metals production is forecast to contract in all three of these markets this year, with Italy likely to be hit especially hard by the US tariffs. How do you assess the outlook for European mills in the fourth quarter?
Well, the fourth quarter is almost here. So all things being the same, I don't think we will see much change. Okay, in Europe, you can see a little bit of change due to summer season is over, holidays over. Maybe demand would come back a little bit, but that's due to the holiday period being not so well. I think they are in this more or less the same position as Turkish mills, as you know, they will be hit hard by the US tariffs. We are in the same position as long as, you know, you cannot sell your material to these export markets. You are stuck, and you need to export, actually. And like us, the markets where you can be active in exports, unfortunately, being limited at the moment. I think they're in the same boat with us.
UK has 50% advantage.
UK is a different story.
Yeah,
yes,
because they have 25% versus the rest of the world.
Okay, that's a different story. Yes.
Yes, the British has put
British will have 25% as to 50% the rest of the world.
Okay. A similar question for the traders. What's your perspective regarding long steel demand in Europe in the last quarter of 2025?
Well, we are already in the last quarter of 2025, and I don't think much will change. There are a lot of steps that the European Union should take, one of which is, put more emphasis on infrastructure projects that will stimulate the economy. The second, of course, is the interest rates. You know, when the interest rates are lowered, you will stimulate the construction both in, private and the on office buildings or any business. So it is. There are some steps that they need to take. Frankly, I don't think they will, but if they do it, that will stimulate the European economy. European economy has been on a downward trend for a while, which is what we see and feel in our industry.
Thank you very much. Next question is for the raw material suppliers. What's the current situation in the financing of trading of scrap and or other raw materials?
Yeah, we see quite a bit of reductions in credit insurance for the industries. So that's having a negative effect on ability to give credit to the industry, especially so that's one of the aspects that's challenging for the suppliers at the moment, at least. And in general, trade finance is continuing to work well.
I don't think it is well when you look at the trader side. I mean, I think the traders are much squeezed from their bankers with knowing that there will be reduction in their sales, and insurance companies are also on a negative. When you talk to the insurance companies, for your exports, you have less tendency to get better credits. So I think on the credit side, there is a huge squeeze on the traders.
Yeah.
It's difficult times. So last question I have here is for the panel. Is green steel going to be an opportunity or bring along cost pressure? Which countries will be the winners and which ones will be the losers? What would you think? Who wants to?
There will definitely be a cost pressure. The mills who are ready or who can do this investment just to get the green steel will, of course, benefit, and others will not be benefiting, as far as to my idea.
Well, if the green steel is enforced on domestic and imports, then it's going to equalize. But the key thing is how fair it will be applied to domestic mills versus the imports. So, if it applies to all, it's a good thing, of course. Eventually, there are some mills around the world that are highly pollutant, and I've been in places where you could hardly see from here to the end of the room, and that much, terrible conditions exist. So it's a good thing, but it has to be applied for your production as well as the others.
Thank you very much. Any comments, Jens?
Well, I mean, we see. We were talking about China. They're enforcing, and they are fast, and they're also turning towards green and trying to become, better at what they're doing. So I think it's not just like a European issue; it's more global. So I mean, in Europe has the problem that there's not enough energy, or energy is an imported good. So if there's abundance of energy, then green steel is of course sensible. But if there's a lack of energy, then it's going to be quite difficult to make that shift. So winners could be GCC countries where there's ample energy to be able to ship DRI, HBI, for example. But the possible cost pressure will be where markets are protecting itself, like Europe. Difficult.
So Europe is for sure not going to have an energy independence for a long, long time.
No.
So that means you don't expect the European mills to really convert and do something about it.
Well, there's not enough energy, at least, to produce hydrogen like they were expecting or they were planning for a long time ago.
I thought they quit that now.
I mean, I don't think they're saying quit, but more or less, I think it's falling out of their investment programs because of cost overruns and not making it work. So we will see more of natural gas, but natural gas is also imported into Europe. So normally you use natural gas where you have an abundance of natural gas.
Thank you. Any comments from the floor on this one? Can we have the microphone, please? Where's the microphone? Here, please. Front side. The front row, please. Have you later.
I have one question.
It's open, I guess. On?
I have one question regarding the material. If you look for the iron ore, from beginning from this year till today, the price is stable from 100 up to 105, like that, stable, and same quantity. If you look also for scrap, also the price within 340, like that, also stable with the quantity. I see that mean material already, the raw material, and whole year the same quantity, but I see the finished good price coming down. But the raw material, the price is stable. Also in the scrap, also price is stable. Where does this material go? Because when we yesterday in the committee about the trader, I see some positive, some negative, and some countries they are not working. But where is this all quantity then go? I mean.
So what would you say? Any comments from traders' side or producers?
It's very difficult to say something about
Look,
that.
you know, I was thinking even when you transport the iron ore from Brazil all the way to China, you're already polluting with the vessels, you know, because the vessels they're using, and they're really major pollutants already. So, look, I see the squeeze. I see the squeeze for the mills. I see the problem for the mills. Unless the economies in Europe, in US, and the rest of the world do better, you're not going to do better. Sorry.
Any comments from
Everybody's cutting the production just because of that, because there's no profit margin. The scrap price and iron ore price more or less the same, but finished goods prices, unfortunately, not catching up with those prices, and you know, it's not the profit margin. Or there's no profit margin at all.
Look at the times when the economy is moving fast. Those are the years that you guys were making tons of money. So it's, look, sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's not.
So the answer is probably the lower capacity utilization.
Yeah. It's a lower capacity. Like we are using 60-65% of our, you know, in total capacities. So that's what it is.
Lower capacity utilization rates everywhere.
Competition, price. We've been talking about, you know, price pressures everywhere.
Thank you.
On top of that, you know, the materials coming very cheap from China and Asia. Of course, you have to compete with those guys. No matter what you do, you cannot increase the price. And that's another issue, actually, for price not going up.
Yeah, but also the raw material side, it is not cut.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah.
For as long as it is not subsidized in the countries that's coming. In other words, if, let's say, China is subsidizing their steel industry heavily for them to compete and put the rest of the world out of business, life is good. But typically, what I would be against is countries that are seriously subsidizing their industries and invading other countries' markets. That is not fair.
On the iron ore side, these bigger, larger iron ore suppliers, the top iron ore suppliers, they have huge margins, so they don't care. Can we have the microphone for the gentleman over there?
Good morning. So one aspect I don't see discussed necessarily as much in talking about the green steel and the green steel transition is lead market generation. And the European Commission is working on a lot of things to be unveiled before the end of this year in terms of embedding sustainability criteria, circularity criteria into public procurement, which, as you'll know, represents like 15% of steel demand within the continent. So I'd be interested to know what your kind of perspectives are on what that might do for the markets and stimulating green steel demand, and how you are preparing for that in terms of you know, the prevalent uncertainty around what that's going to look like, not only in terms of that lead market generation, but also the more defensive aspects like the carbon border adjustment mechanism. Do you have any perspectives on how lead market generation might look and what your own expectations are in terms of, for example, the embedded green steel definition that European Commission are going to come out with by the end of this year? Tough question, sorry.
Tough question.
There's
It's so tough.
This is the most difficult question, I guess.
Yeah, but there are many unknowns actually about this going on. Nobody knows for sure. I mean, it's said that it's going to be starting in the beginning of the year, but there are lots of gossips going on. And whomever I talk to, everybody is kind of lost, you know, there is no clarity. That's what it is. So I'm also lost, you know, to be honest with you. There is no definitive answer to whomever I ask, to whomever I talk to. They are in the same position, so unfortunately I'm not able to give you a clear answer to this question.
No, I totally understand. And I mean, I think there is going to be additional certainty by the end of the year in terms of CBAM benchmarks, the Industrial Decarbonization Accelerator Act, Net Zero Industry Act, but certainly I agree. We'll have to wait and see, I guess.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We can have one last question because I know that there are flights to catch for our colleagues. Is there any other question? Yes, please. No, here on the front, at the front row.
I'm sorry, it's going to be two questions actually. So one is for Mr. Björkman. So we heard over those 2 days that scrap production in Europe is sufficient not only for the domestic market, but also like to export. But on the other hand, there's going to be transition to greener steel production, and there possibly will be restrictions. Considering all these conditions, what is the situation with like development of new capacities for scrap collection and processing, like shredders and sorting lines? Do you see like any increase in these capacities, or this is limited because it's like maybe not necessary?
No, we see investments in shredder capacity, especially because in Europe, if we're talking about Europe then, right? So in Europe, a lot of the obsolete scrap is needed to separate. So complex materials need to be separated, and normally that's mechanically separated, and shredders are good for that. So we will see continued investments in shredder capacity.
It's mainly Northern Europe, yes, I believe, or no?
I'm sorry?
Mainly in Northern Europe, these new capacities.
Yeah, in Northern Europe, you could say.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. And the second question is to Producers and Traders Committee, because like abbreviation of CBAM, we heard like 100 times at this meeting, but there is also going to be a change in safeguard system in Europe. And it's going to be like tougher because quotas will be for each country, and there are discussions that the out of quota duty will be up to 50%. Like nobody knows whether it's going to be really it, but what are your expectations about the volumes of import long steel coming into Europe? Like how much these volumes will be limited because of new safeguard measures, and where they can be reallocated?
Where they can be reallocated is tough. I don't think there is much of a place that can be reallocated to. That's the reason we have cut production, because it's already been tough, not only quota in Europe and US and Canada and Far East, we cannot export. But again, it's limited anyway, and it's country by country. Again, Turkey has its own quota to Europe. Every 3 months it's below 100,000 tons. It's 98,000 if I'm not mistaken for rebars, and 95 for wire rod, or vice versa. And we have 25% if it's gone over that number. Last time actually they paid a lot. They paid $65, $70 per ton, European importers. It was surpassed the quota twice. It was doubled actually. Okay, they can make it smaller. Of course, then it will hurt more. If they limit the quota further, of course, we'll be shipping much less. And if People, traders, whomever they are buying over there, they would be afraid of doing business.
So we can kind of say that there will be even more pressure on capacity utilization, probably, if this kind of happens.
Okay, I mean, as you rightly said, that if there is no place where we can compensate that loss, there would be so, yes.
Yeah, I got your point. Thank you.
So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Let me close the session. I would like to thank you all for your contributions. Obviously, I would like to thank all the gentlemen, the chairman of the IREPAS committees, for sharing the findings of their respective committees and their responses to the questions. Thanks once again for your participation during the course of these 2 days. I would also like to thank our distinguished speakers for sharing their experiences and opinions during the course of these 2 days, and obviously our sponsors, our platinum sponsors, İçtaş, Ekinciler Iron and Steel Industries, Belgian Scrap Terminal, IMASH Recycling Machinery, Euroband, and Mono International Limited. I hope that we can see each other in Amsterdam in 6 months' time. Thank you very much and have a safe trip back home. Thank you.